everybody, this is Perch. While I was out, DC Comics announced via Twitter, I'm sure other social media platforms as well, that Paul Dano, who starred as the Riddler, and Paul Dano was in a movie, it's further back. This is like 10 years ago where somebody helped me with the title of this. He basically was a writer and he invented a girl. Like he wrote a girl into life and then he started dating her. And it was a charming movie. I watched that on a plane. I enjoyed it. There's something fun about that movie. Anyway, sorry. But Paul Dano, who played the Riddler in the Batman movie, which is doing fairly well, or pretty well, very good. I don't know. What does box office very well mean anymore? It's good. It's doing good. Money is being made. So Paul Dano plays the Riddler in this movie, and he is writing a comic book of the Riddler. So Riddler Year One, I think, is what, because it's DC, so they got to plaster Year One on everything. So Paul Dano is writing this Riddler Year One comic, and DC goes to Twitter to announce, hey, we got good news. Paul Dano is writing the Riddler. And I know people have already apparently done a bunch of videos on this, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But a number of creators jumped in to bitch at DC about why the artist wasn't mentioned. And then Bleeding Cool wrote a very sarcastic article about DC Comics reveals Paul Dano isn't drawing the Riddler Year One comic. And they posted all these tweets from, Mitch Gerards to Brian Hitch to Heather Antos. Heather Antos, seriously, DC, you can't plug the artist. Neither can you, Heather Antos, as the editor, have promoted books where you didn't plug the artist either. Neither have you, lady. Anyway, Cully Hammer's on there, a bunch of very sarcastic kind of, who's the artist? And then, the videos have been made about what a kind of overall douche thing all that was. But there's 3 points I wanted to make on this. Number one, like a happy one, an average one, and a miserable point. Okay, so the happy one is the artist of the book, Stefan Subik, comes in and basically tweets, does he go in and does he trash DC? Does he complain about being left out of the credits? Does he write some kind of sarcastic thing? No, he does not. Instead, he writes, DC has officially unleashed the word, is traveling around the globe already. Excited to join the flow. Riddler Year One, written by Paul Dano, art by yours truly. For now, here's a teaser I drew for the openings. Stay tuned. And then he went on to post a couple other kind of general excited comments about how, thank you guys for spreading the word. Excited. I'm very excited to do this book. All very positive. Good for him. That's what's called a adult, unlike some of the other people who came into like Mitch Gerards. I assume somebody drew it too. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you for weighing in on that important conversation. One day, I hope you have the same maturity level as the artist of the book, Stefan. But good for him. Just did he choose to take take a swipe at his employer? No, he just came in and promoted himself and promoted the book. And if I'm an editor at DC or I'm somebody who works there, I'm working with that guy again because here's somebody that isn't making it into a big deal. That's point number one. Point number two, kind of the average benign point is, this is where people who work in comics do themselves a disservice. Because why didn't DC list the artist on this book? Well, for largely the same reason they didn't list the inker or the writer, they did list the writer, the inker or the colorist or the editor. They only listed the writer, and the reason they listed the writer is because Paul Dano is currently in a high-grossing feature film featuring the character, starring the character the comic book's about. That press was out. The entire tweet and the entire point of it had one purpose, and that purpose was to connect the dots between people who went to see the Batman movie starring Paul Dano as the Riddler to the fact that the same guy, Paul Dano, is going to write a story about the Riddler. That was the entire purpose of that tweet. Having the artist, having the colorist, having anyone else in the tweet was irrelevant. It was trying to hook in people who were, going to that movie. And is that a crazy idea? It's not a crazy idea. Now, it's an incredibly flawed premise, and that's what I'll get to in the third point. But it's not a crazy idea at all. It's an idea that makes absolute sense. Because you're literally the person whose name is hot and trending and people are paying attention to right now is Paul Dano. That's what's going on. People are not paying attention to the artist, Stefan Subic, who looks like a very good artist from the pages that he shared. But he is not part of this picture. Now, you might argue, oh, but you could give him the rub from, putting him in the same tweet as Paul Dano. No, you would not. It doesn't work that way. The rub he's going to get is hopefully people buying the comic book because Paul Dano's name is attached to it, and he's very popular right now. That's the entire point. He's trying to bring promotion from the movie, which is doing astronomically better than any of the comics. The money that the movie is making will be what DC makes for the year in all the comics they produce. So when you see, IDW editor Heather Antos are like, seriously, DC, you can't credit the artist? No, you can't, Heather, because there's no, it's not even the game that's being played. Which again, you know perfectly well since you tweet some of the same stuff yourself. Does anyone really need an explanation as to why the artist wasn't included in that tweet? It's common sense why the artist wasn't included in that tweet, because that wasn't the point of it. Stop making drama where drama doesn't exist. You're trying to make money for the comics. You're trying to actually give this guy, this artist that everybody's jumping in on, Stefan, you're trying to give him a payday and a paycheck. How about you stop getting in the way of that and just let the paycheck come? This isn't a big slight against comics. You're being a child. But this brings me to the third point, which is this. The entire idea of having a celebrity write a comic, in this case Paul Dano, it doesn't actually work. So despite everything I just said, it makes logical sense why they did all the things they did for the marketing. The only thing that doesn't make logical sense is the fact that whether it's J.J. Abrams and Son writing Spider-Man or Danny DeVito writing a Penguin story, or in this case, Paul Dano writing the Riddler, it doesn't translate to sales. People do not come in and buy books off of these celebrities. Ironically, they would be far more likely to come in and buy the books if it was a well-known comic artist, as opposed to a well-known celebrity writer who's stepping in on this. So what does that mean? It means that DC does need to ask themselves a question, and this is a really good question. Why is it that a movie that's making hundreds of millions of dollars, and Paul Dano, who's not a massive celebrity, but definitely his name and profile is raised a bunch by this movie, why is it that the comic books can't seem to take advantage of the fact that there is a movie making hundreds of millions of dollars and written by one of the stars of that movie? Why is it that that doesn't seem to work? Why is it that J.J. Abrams, who at the time of that announcement was Spider-Man, was pretty red hot as a director? Why is it that the idea of J.J. Abrams coming in to pin a Spider-Man story can't move the needle to a ton of sales? Why is it that, despite all the nostalgia and kind of good feelings people have toward Danny DeVito and his role as the Penguin, and there is a lot of nostalgia around that, why didn't people show up to buy that comic? Why didn't it sell more? If you look at all the celebrity engagements with comic books in the past, they never seem to work. They don't seem to go anywhere. And honestly, and this is a deep soul-searching question for the comic publishers, why is it that when you have the Avengers making $2 billion, the comic, The Avengers, struggles to sell in the top 25? Why? Shouldn't it be doing better? Why isn't it doing better? So despite the fact of all this drama, and like I said, people have done videos and there's been lots of discussion about what, stupid immature tards, the various people who came in to comment on that. And that is true, 100% true, they are. But the question I don't see asked is, why doesn't this work? Now, maybe I'll have to eat my words, and this Paul Dano Riddler Year One is going to sell, 400,000 copies. But it won't. I'll predict it right now. This comic, Riddler Year One, Paul Dano, is going to be somewhere between 40 and 50,000 copies sold. That's what we'll do. And the only reason it's that high is because it is loosely attached to Batman. So why doesn't it do better? You can't give me that excuse of like, well, comic book fans, movie fans don't read comics. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, I'm gonna say bullshit because there is actually one example. Somehow, some way, Keanu Reeves putting his name on Berserker sold a crap load of comics. Why did that work? And none of this other stuff seems to work. And more importantly, why do publishers keep going back to the same trick when it clearly doesn't work? Why is that? Anyway, I'm going to leave you there with that question. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And thanks for listening.